Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Dear students, you are welcome in this class, and the topic of the lecture is nutrient management in cropping systems. Learning objectives are to familiarize you with the concepts and types of cropping system in India. We will try to discuss and about the existing cropping system in the country, what are the advantages and limitations of different cropping systems in the country, and recommended fertilizer and integrated management practices in cropping systems and crops. We have variety of number of cropping system in different regions of the country, and we will see how nutrient management is practiced in different cropping systems. Now some glossary. So like crop rotation, it is a planned sequence of crops growing in a regularly recurring succession on the same area of land as contrasted to continuous culture of one crop or growing different crops in haphazard order. Means there is some order of replacing one crop with another crop, another kind of crop in the same field. There is no repetition of crop in the rotation. Means suppose this year you have taken rice in this field, then for 2-3 years you should not take rice. You can take some other kharif season crops in place of rice. So that is your rotation. Dung is the semi-solid excreta of large animals excluding humus. So mostly we get dung from horses, from cows, from buffaloes, etc. These are livestock, and it is frequently used as manure, soil conditioner, biogas plant input, and as domestic fuel. Dung is the main ingredient of FYM. FYM chiefly contains your dung and bedding material as well as urine, and also some fodder, leftover fodder also included in FYM. Mineral and organic compound of defined composition found in rocks, and adjective meaning inorganic. So it has got two meanings. There may be some more meanings of mineral. Now sewage sludge, the settled sewage solid combined with varying amounts of water and dissolved materials removed from sewage by the screening, sedimentation, chemical precipitation, or bacterial digestion. Complex fertilizer, a fertilizer that contains two or more major nutrients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium made by a chemical reaction between the nutrient containing raw material. Press mud, it is a byproduct of sugar factories, residue obtained by filtration of the precipitated impurities that settle out in the process of clarification of the mixed juice from sugarcane, forms a cake of variable moisture content. So press mud is now frequently being used by farmers as a source of nutrients, and sometimes it is composted, then its properties change from the fresh press mud. Prills, spherical particle obtained by solidification of falling droplets of fertilizer during manufacture process. For example, prilled urea. So prilled urea was very common few decades back, but now people prefer granulated urea. Suspension fertilizer, a two-phase fertilizer in which solid particles are maintained in suspension in the aqueous phase, a type of liquid fertilizer. Now we start the main topic, that is cropping system. Basically we are going to deal with nutrient management in cropping systems. So nutrient management, by now I think most of you know what do we mean by nutrient management. It is identifying the best nutrient management practices, including the rate of application, the best source of application, best method of application, and best time of application. How best we can manage, how best we can apply nutrients to the soil so that our soil health is improved, benefits or profits are also obtained, suitable profits are also obtained from fertilizer application, and there should be least influence or least losses of the fertilizer so that environment is also protected. So nutrient management is just practice of applying nutrient at right time, right dose, right source, etc. So how best we can manage nutrients on cropping system basis? Because many times what happens, suppose you have applied farmyard manure in X crop, in the first crop, and in the second crop there will definitely be some residual effect. Similarly, phosphorus and potassium, they have residual effect for the next crop or succeeding crop. So there will be some contribution from the phosphorus or potassium applied to the first crop in the second crop. So can we reduce the quantity of nutrient in the second crop? That is why we need nutrient recommendation on cropping system basis, so that we get the best economics out of nutrient management. So that is the kind of nutrient management we are going to discuss today. However, the research is very limited in this area. People do research for certain specific cropping system under a particular climatic or soil conditions. In that case also, those kind of research is done only for 2 years, 3 years. So mostly they do research on integrated crop management for the whole cropping system. So such kind of data is also available. We have also seen some results from the long-term fertilizer experiment where this integrated nutrient management practice was found to be best. So today I will give you some example of INM practices in different cropping system that gives you maximum profit and maximum benefits. So in the beginning, let us try to understand what do we mean by cropping system. So principles and practices of cropping and their interaction with farm resources, technology, aerial and edaphic environment to suit the needs and production its strategy. So it is an important component of farming system, that is cropping system. Now let us see what are the characteristics of a good cropping system. Number one, it maintains an adequate level of production and income. Means we need to choose a kind of cropping system that gives you sufficient level of production as well as sufficient source of income. Number two, it minimizes economic risk and provide for pest control. There should be least risk. In this case, one can go for intercropping system where 2 crops can be taken, sometimes 3 crops can be taken, and also one can go for mixed cropping also, particularly in dryland areas or rain-fed areas. And also we should look into the kind of crops in the cropping system that also help in the pest control or disease control. There should not be repetition of the crops of same family, or we should change the type of crop, and also dicot can be succeeded by monocot and vice versa. It maintains organic matter and good chemical, physical and biological environment of the soil. So cropping system should be such which enhances organic matter in the soil. So there should be some provision for green manures, provision for including leguminous crops, and also alteration or change of crops should be frequent so that organic matter accumulation happens in the soil and we get benefit in terms of improved soil physical, chemical and biological properties. Now there are two kind of cropping system in India that are practiced. Number one is monoculture cropping system, other is multiple cropping system. Multiple cropping system is also called as multi-cropping system. It is the way people call it. Now see, what do we mean by monoculture? The repetitive growing of the sole crop on the same piece of land. This is known as monoculture. Monoculture means just growing one kind of crop year after year, season after season. There is no change in crop. That is known as monoculture. And in this case, in the case of monoculture, there are some issues. There are certain disadvantage of monoculture, increased risk of diseases, because every time we are taking same crop and then disease risk increases because the infection material, the pathogens remain in the field and they can attack the next crop or the succeeding crop. So buildup of insect pest and disease happens in case of monoculture. Increased weed pressure. So every time if we grow the same crop, then the certain weeds get established and they are difficult to control. They become very, very troublesome under monoculture system. Increased economic risk. we are taking just one crop year after year. In this case, if any problem happen, any particular pest or disease comes, then the whole crop will be wiped out. So we have very increased economic risk in this case, and of course there are many soil fertility problems related to monoculture, because the rooting depth of the plant will remain the same. So nutrients will be extracted from the fixed layer of the soil. That means it will get exhausted, and and the nutrients which are below that rooting zone will remain unutilized. Had we taken leguminous crop or deep rooted crop, then the nutrients which are lying on the lower layer of the soil could have been utilized. So that is actually kind of loss. But nevertheless, it has got certain advantage also, like it fits crops to the soils, because farmers know it, and there is some adaptation kind of mechanism from soil side, and good marketing, because you have a specialized marketing. So marketing can also happen. See the case of rice and wheat, they are very dominant in Punjab because they have very good marketing infrastructure. So they prefer this monoculture, although it is not good, but they are doing it. Lower machinery cost. So every time you need not to change the machinery, because you have one crop. If you have multiple crops, then you need to have multiple machineries. So therefore monoculture, of course it is practiced, but it is not good from many perspectives. Dear students, there is one more term which is monocropping. Monocropping means growing one crop, just one crop in a year. That crop could be of any family, any type. But taking just one crop is your monocropping. Taking two crops in a year is double cropping, and so on. But monoculture means growing one kind of crop year after year. So sometimes there is confusion in monoculture and monocropping. Now see multiple cropping. Multiple cropping means it is a general term, and growing two or more different crops on the same field in a year is known as multiple cropping. Generally, two or more crops are taken, and sometimes very intensive rotations are there where 4 crops are also possible in 1 year. So those kind of rotations need some special care, special attention. Otherwise, there will be nutrient mining and lot of issues related to sustainability of such systems. So multiple cropping, of course, it is better than the monoculture, and it has got some advantages like spread economic risk. So you have variety of crops, 2 crops, 3 crops, intercropping system, mixed cropping system. So definitely if one crop is lost, the other can compensate for that. So compared to monoculture, the economic risk is spread here, is spread on many crops. So less economic risk. Reduce incidence of insect pests and diseases. If we take crop rotations where we grow crops of different family, different kind, then incidence of insect pests and disease always low, because a particular pest which is infecting or attacking or infesting rice crop will not be able to do the same for the next crop, say wheat crop or maize crop, winter maize crop, or any other crop. So if we change the crop, then insect pest incidence definitely going to reduce. Crop rotations have very important role in reducing the insect pest and disease incidence. See the case of intercropping system or strip cropping system. In a strip cropping system, you take 2 or 3 kind of crop in strips. First crop can be taken in 5 rows or 6 rows or 10 rows. Second crop is also taken in rows, kind of row intercropping. In this case, suppose these 2 crops are of very different nature. So when insect moves from one crop to the same crop, but in between the other crop will act as a barrier. So therefore, spread of insect is also stopped by certain intercropping systems. So these rotations are very important in reducing the insect pest and disease. And also better weed control in the this multiple cropping system, because you take different kind of crops and some crop may have some allelopathic effect on the weeds. Therefore, weed control is also better compared to monoculture. But that is the good thing about multiculture, but there are certain limitations or disadvantages of multiple cropping systems. The systems are more complex and little understood, because you have so many crops, you do not know how much irrigation should be applied on cropping system basis, what should be the nutrient management practices. because in most of the cases information is scanty. So therefore, system is really very complex. In many actual economic systems, not considered to be economically efficient, because you need to manage variety of crops. Cost of cultivation may vary from one crop to another crop. In some cases, it will be too high. So therefore, it is not sure that you can get some benefits out of it. There may be issues with the marketing. See, in Punjab, they take rice, wheat, because marketing facilities are available. That is very important reason for spread of rice and wheat in Punjab. Normally, greater need for hand labor, because you have number of crops, a variety of operations are performed. In some case, you are going for the sowing, in another case harvesting, in another case you are going for irrigation. If you have number of crops at a one particular point of time, there will be many activities, many crop management practices for which you need variety of labor, number of labor. So sometimes labor shortage can happen, that can affect the work. There is shortage of trained personnel, because you grow n kind of crop, number of crops, and sometimes agronomy or production technique of a particular crop may not be known to farmer. Suppose a farmer is going to introduce and interested to grow turmeric. He does not know what is the variety, what are the planting method for turmeric. So he need to get some training. So you need trained personnel if you are going for multiple cropping systems. So multiple cropping systems can be further divided into two: sequential cropping system and intercropping system. So in sequential cropping system, growing two or more crops in a sequence on the same field in a year. So that is your kind of sequential cropping. Succeeding crop is planted after the harvest of the previous crop. Crop intensification is in time dimension. It is always in time dimension. No intercrop competition, because here there is no intercropping, and farmers manage only one crop at a time. This is the advantage of sequential cropping. But we are diversifying the system, because here you are not taking the same crop in the rotation. If you are taking two crops in sequence, they are of different nature. Now the other type of multiple cropping is intercropping. So growing two or more dissimilar, remember it is dissimilar, crops simultaneously on the same piece of land in distinct row arrangement, that is your intercropping. The optimum plant population of base crop is combined with appropriate population of intercrop. So in intercropping system, normally there is a base crop which is widely spaced. Take the example of sugarcane, cotton, maize, or any other widely spaced crop. In between two rows of these crops, you can plant some short duration pulse or oil seed or some other crop, maybe green manure crop also, which is called as intercrop. So here you are diversifying the system in time and space both. So that is the advantage in intercropping, but in sequential cropping, it is mostly or only in time. Intensification of cropping system both in time and space in intercropping system. So here things become bit complex for nutrient management. So for nutrient management, should we apply the nutrient requirement of the base crop? Should we consider the nutrient requirement of the intercrop, or should we consider the nutrient requirement for both the crops? There are so many questions, and one more question should be, if I apply 100% requirement of the base crop, how much percentage requirement of the intercrop of nutrient should I apply? So this kind of work has been done in some research institution, but a lot of research work is yet to be done, so that we can give some recommendations. Some recommendations have come, but they are mostly region basis. They are regional recommendation. We need recommendation for all the zones, for intercropping system as well as for sequential cropping system. Now see, there are different kinds of intercropping system. Mixed intercropping, it is growing component crops simultaneously with no distinct row management in mixed intercropping. Row intercropping, growing component crops simultaneously in different row arrangement. Just I told you, we can have 3 rows of one crop, 4 rows of another crop. It is maybe sometimes common in mustard wheat. Mustard wheat system, you can take 4 rows of mustard and then 8 rows of wheat, something like that. Some ideal row ratios are there. You can know from the literature for different regions. Then strip intercropping. growing component crops in different strips wide enough to permit independent cultivation. So, this is also practiced in some hilly areas. Relay intercropping is also done, growing component crops in relay so that growth cycle overlap. In relay intercropping, the sowing of the succeeding crop is done when the preceding crop is still standing in the field. That kind of relay cropping system is there. It happens in case of Barsim. Suppose your paddy is there, rice is there in the field, and you are not able to harvest it, and some moisture conditions are there, it has not matured properly. So, what people do, they broadcast the seed of Barsim or broadcast the seed of lentil. In Madhya Pradesh, some people are doing it. In Tarai belts, they do for rice Barsim. In Madhya Pradesh, they can do it for rice lentil or rice linseed. So, linseed or lentil seed is sown when rice is still not harvested and conditions are moist, and after some time the crop will be harvested, and then the other crop, succeeding crop, will start growing, and this is very interesting. It is without tillage, kind of zero tillage, which has been practiced in India for a very long time, and it saves lot of energy. And also because normally we take leguminous crop, so there is no need for basal application of nutrients under these conditions, because these are rain-fed situation. So, relay intercropping is of course good. It increases diversification, it increases your yields, it increases profits also. Now, see mixed farming, mixed cropping. Mixed cropping is growing two or more crops simultaneously on the same piece of land, either sown after the seeds of the crops intended to be grown mixed, or sowing alternate rows in various replacement ratio. So, there are number of choices in mixed cropping. However, it is mostly practiced in rain-fed areas wherever we have scarcity of water, because it creates lot of difficulty in managing the crop, in managing insect pest disease, in managing your weeds or intercultural operations or harvesting, creates lot of difficulty, this mixed cropping. Now, determinants of cropping system. These determinants of cropping system means what are the factors that will decide that a particular cropping system will be adopted in this region. If you want to introduce a new cropping system into a area, then what factors will affect introduction of a new cropping system, or why a particular system is prevailing in a particular region? What are the reasons, what are the factors that affect the adoption of different cropping systems? So, there are so many factors like soil and climate, socio-economic factors, crop varieties, soil health, pest environment, water resources, and government policies. So, for example, soil and climate will determine the cropping system. Every crop cannot suit to a particular soil. You have some soil specific crop. Suppose in rainy season in West Bengal, it is most of the rainfall occur during that part. So, fields are totally flooded with water. So, you have no choice except rice. So, only rice can grow under those conditions. So your soil or climatic condition that will decide the crop. In that case, you cannot grow maize in the waterlogged conditions. So, there are situations in Rajasthan, for example, in Kharif season rains are very less. So, you cannot grow rice there, because rice need lot of water. So, only option left is to grow some drought tolerant or drought resistant crop like pulse millet. So, pulse millet is suited to those areas. So, this soil and climatic conditions will definitely have very important role in deciding the kind of cropping system a region will adopt. Then socio-economic factors are also important. We have some lot of socio-economic factors. The rich farmers who have enough money can take risk, but smallholder farmers, they cannot take risk by introducing new crop or new cropping system. So, risk bearing capacity differs from one farmer to another farmer. And also sometimes religion come into picture. A particular people from a particular religion would not like to grow a particular crop because of some religious phase. For example, case of tobacco. In some parts of the country, a particular section do not want to grow tobacco, religious people. So, these kind of socio-economic religious factor also affect the cropping system. Crop varieties, if varieties are available, particularly insect pest, disease resistant variety, then those kind of crops would be easily adopted. But if varieties are lacking, there are no good varieties, then no farmer would dare or take risk to introduce that new crop. So, presence or development of varieties is also important in the adoption of cropping system. Soil health. If your soil health is poor, you cannot take a good crop or high yielding crop whose nutrient requirement is high. So, if soil health is poor, then definitely you will take the crops which require less and lesser nutrients. Under these conditions, marginal soil fertility condition, one can prefer pulses or oil seeds which require less nutrients. Pest environment, if a pest is very dominating and it is causing some havoc, some problem, then people fear and they leave up the crop. See the case of cotton. In year 2015, there was a very big attack of whitefly in the country, in Punjab, in Haryana, in Rajasthan, in Himachal Pradesh. This crop was totally wiped out. So farmer lost interest in cotton, and by next year maybe many farmers have left growing the cotton. Similarly, there are certain more pest invasions which discourage the farmers to take a particular crop. Government policies are also important. If government is giving the marketing support, if government is giving minimum support prices, then farmers would be happy to grow the crop. If a particular crop or commodity is not covered by the MSP, then farmers may not be interested because they are not sure of getting the assured return for their product. Now see this rice wheat major cropping system in India. Rice wheat is the dominant cropping system which cover very large area in India. Rice, cotton wheat, soybean wheat, maize wheat, pulse millet wheat. So you can see the distribution of these rotations. See the distribution of rice wheat. It is mostly dominant in Indo-Gangetic plain. See the case of rice is in South India. You see down South India. Cotton wheat is mostly in Northwest India. Soybean wheat is there in the Central India. Maize wheat is there in the North India, and pulse millet wheat is there Northwest India, Rajasthan, etc. So for details you can see here, rice wheat covers about 10 million hectare area, mostly dominating in West Bengal, UP, Gujarat, Punjab, Haryana, MP, JK and so on. The next cropping system is rice 5.89 area in India, and Andhra Pradesh, Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Assam, Odisha, etc. Next is rice fallow cropping system, 4.42 million hectare, Jharkhand, Karnataka, MP, etc. So this is third important cropping system of the country, and the first two cropping systems are very important for food security. Particularly rice wheat system is backbone of our national food security. And then fallow gram in 2.4 million hectare area, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Haryana, UP. Fallow wheat 2 million hectare in MP, UP. Maize wheat system, Punjab, JK, Himachal, Haryana, Bihar, UP. So these fallow systems are quite common. In Kharif season they do not grow any crop, and in Rabi season they grow those kind of crop under rain-fed situation. On the moisture which was received in Kharif, that moisture will be conserved and crop in winter can be grown on that conserved water under rain-fed conditions of Madhya Pradesh mainly. Soybean wheat is quite popular in Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan, Maharashtra, and area is 2.23 million hectare. Soybean wheat 2.23 million hectare, soybean fallow 1.17, and there are many more rotations. You can see the list what are prominent or dominant in our country. Now, nutrient management in diversified cropping system. Now we will touch the main subject, how we can do the nutrient management. So it is important to know the crops in the system, what kind of type and number, and variety is also important, because if the variety change, the nutrient requirement will also change. There may be some short duration variety, some long duration variety, some low yielding variety, some high yielding variety. So nutrient requirement varies with the type of variety. Then sequential or intercropping, we need to see whether it is sequential system or intercropping system, and sometimes it can be mix of both. One crop is taken as intercrop in one season, and then next time you take another crop in the sequence. Years of cropping system followed. How many years a particular system has been followed? Sources or nature of nutrients supplied, what has been supplied, means this is just to gauge idea about the soil fertility. Irrigation facilities available, higher requirement generally if you have irrigation facility. If they are not there, nutrient recommendations are generally low. And soil type also affects the nutrient recommendations. So these are very important consideration in nutrient management for system basis. Now this is of course very old recommendation but quite useful recommendation. Fertilizer used under multiple cropping system. So such kind of recommendation in fact are not available at the moment. They have never been compiled in India. So whatever has been compiled that time, but it can give some leads to us. So for example, in rice based cropping system, these information were compiled by Dr. Rajendra Prasad in his book. So I have taken most of the part from his book because I could not see the original book which I have shown you here, but they are very relevant recommendations. So rice based cropping system, we will see under irrigated rice what are different nutrient recommendations. So rice wheat sequential system, which is 10 million hectare in Indo-Gangetic plains. For alluvial soils in the Indian subcontinent, nitrogen to be applied to both crops. Remember, if you are applying nitrogen, apply to both crops, but phosphorus should be applied to wheat only, and K and zinc to be applied to rice. So these kind of recommendations are not very common on cropping system basis. Next is rice, mung bean or soya bean sequential system. Nitrogen to be applied to both the rice crops, while phosphorus to be applied only to one, preferably the second crop. Rice cropped together with potassium, sulfur and zinc on the basis of the soil test. So this is recommendation. The third one system is rice jute sequential system. Nitrogen to be applied to both crops, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur and zinc if needed to be applied to jute only. Now under rain-fed rice, what is the recommendation? Rice chickpea, rice lentil, rice horse gram, rice Niger, rice mustard, rice linseed, rice groundnut and rice soybean. This Niger is a oilseed crop. Many of you may not be knowing. Niger is a oilseed crop. So for these crop, nitrogen, phosphorus and other nutrients as required to be applied to rice crop, only 20 kg P2O5 per hectare to be applied to the sequential legume crop if moisture conditions are favorable. So this is recommendation for these rice based rotation, rice pulse, rice oilseeds under rain-fed situation. Then under rain-fed situation, there are some other systems like rice pigeon pea, rice plus maize, rice plus cassava, rice plus Leucaena leucocephala and rice plus canaf intercropping system. In these systems, nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium to be applied to the rice crop only, zinc and iron to be applied to rice when needed. Iron can be applied as foliar spray. Number two cropping system is maize based cropping system. The first one was rice based, now it is maize based cropping system. So it is adopted in two regions, humid tropics and sub-humid tropics. In humid tropics, it is maize cowpea sequential system or maize plus cassava, maize plus groundnut and maize plus phaseolus bean intercropping systems, and there may be maize plus grain oblique cowpea LA cropping system with Leucaena leucocephala. Under sub-humid tropics, maize plus pigeon pea, maize plus soybean, maize plus cowpea and maize plus chickpea or safflower. For all these cropping systems, either in humid tropics or in sub-humid tropics, nitrogen to be applied to maize only, phosphorus to be applied to maize and associated legumes, potassium, sulfur and zinc to be applied to maize when needed. So this is a very good recommendation for these regions. Now third is sorghum based cropping system for semi-arid tropics. Sorghum plus pigeon pea, sorghum plus mung bean, sorghum plus cowpea and sorghum plus groundnut intercropping systems. Other is sorghum yam and sorghum chickpea or safflower sequential system. So here recommendation is nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, sulfur and zinc to be applied to sorghum only. So very clear cut recommendation, no confusion. Fourth is cassava based cropping system for humitropics. Cassava plus maize bean intercropping system. Fertilizer to be applied to either crop according to its importance in the region. Next important points for the recommendation of cropping system from the same proceedings are inclusion of leguminous green manure or forage legume prior to an irrigated rice crop can contribute 30 to 40 kg nitrogen per hectare. Therefore, that much quantity of nitrogen can be reduced in the succeeding crop. So, inclusion of green legumes such as mung bean or cowpea in the cropping system can contribute 20 to 25 kg N. Inclusion of blue-green algae or azolla in the irrigated rice crop can contribute 20 to 25 kg nitrogen per hectare. However, azolla is not very common in India. In certain pockets, people use it as a biofertilizer. Next is Leucaena sown at 4 meter spacing can contribute from top prunings incorporated in the soil up to 60 kg nitrogen per hectare to the companion crop. Fertilizer application should be based on local experience and on the corresponding soil test. In formulating nitrogen rates, due consideration should be given to the contributions from the associated legume crops grown in the system. Now, it has been conclusively proved that if you have cereals and legumes in the intercropping system, with the help of mycorrhiza, part of nitrogen fixed by legume can be transferred to the associated cereal crop concurrently. Concurrently means same time. So, hence it is very good that one can reduce the requirement of nitrogen for the base crop. See this cropping system, some strategies for allocation of fertilizer phosphorus in cropping systems in India. So, first column cropping system, second in annual input, and then allocation strategy suggested by Tandon. Wheat mung bean per millet system, nitrogen suppose it is 6 kg is applied, then is 60 to be applied to the wheat only. Then if it is 90 kg, then 60 to wheat, 30 to mung bean and 30 to millet. If it is 135, then 90 to wheat, 15 to mung bean and 30 to millet. So, these kind of recommendations are excellent. People should do more research and get such kind of recommendations so that nutrients or fertilizers can be saved. Then wheat per millet system, suppose 75 kg is to be used for whole year, then 45 to wheat and 30 to millet. If it is 120, then 60 to wheat and 60 to millet. For potato wheat rice system, if 90 is annual input, then 60 to potato and 30 to wheat. If it is 90 kg, then 60 to wheat and 30 to cotton. Soybean wheat system 50-100, all to soybean or half to soybean and half to wheat. Now, long-term experiment also given some recommendation for different cropping system in different locations of the country. And I can conclude in just in 1 or 2 slides. High intensity crop rotations like 2 to 3 crops year under irrigated conditions are adopted. Levels of crop productivity, that is 8 to 12 tons grain per hectare per year, can be sustained by integrating optimal and balanced fertilization application rates with 10 to 15 tons of farmyard manure per hectare per year. Means INM is the best way. Integrated use of fertilizer and FIM or the lime where needed give higher and more sustainable yields and also more returns. Now, see these kind of recommendations have come up for rice wheat cropping system. Example of INM packages and their comparison with fertilizer recommendations for rice wheat cropping in different agroclimatic regions of India. This was given by Sharma and Biswas year 2004. So, I am just giving you example of 1 or 2 plains because rice wheat system is dominant in Transgangetic plains, Upper Gangetic plains, Middle Gangetic plains, Lower Gangetic plains. These are the major rice wheat system areas in the country. So, for example, suppose it is Transgangetic plains. So, for rice 120 kg nitrogen, 60 kg phosphorus P2O5 and 60 kg K2O plus 20 kg zinc sulfate per hectare is the recommendation of the fertilizer. Then how it should be applied in integrated fashion. Rice you apply 60 kg nitrogen, 30 K2O plus 10 tons of FIM or poultry manure. In wheat 180, 60, 30 is recommendation. Then for wheat 150 plus 30 P2O5 as SSP plus 30 K2O plus azotobacter or azospilum. Then upper Gangetic plain for rice 120, 60, 40, 20 zinc sulfate, and for rice 90 nitrogen, 30 K2O and 10 tons of FYM or green manuring with. So all these recommendations I am not going to read it for you, but you can see in detail these kind of recommendations. They are available. I am giving you the reference for different regions. Now for rain-fed dryland system, medium to high crop yields can be sustained through an integrated use of fertilizers and organic manures. Results of a 9-year field trial with dryland finger millet in the red soils, best yields were obtained when recommended rates of fertilizer were applied in combination with 10 tons FIM per hectare. It was only at this input level that grain yields of 3 tons per hectare and above could be harvested in 8 out of 9 years. So see this case where effect of 50% substitution of nitrogen by organic sources on the productivity of rice cropping system. So this is quite interesting that these organic manures like farmyard manure can substitute nitrogen, 50% nitrogen can be substituted. Dear student, let us know in detail about integrated nutrient management. What are its different components? And it is not that in one particular crop or cropping system you have to use all the components of INM. You can take one or two or three or four combinations of different sources: organic, inorganic, biofertilizers, crop rotations, cropping system, manures and so on. So I will demonstrate you, show you how these combinations can be used for nutrient management in different cropping system. But before that, in brief, I would like to explain what is integrated nutrient management. So integrated nutrient management or INM, sometimes people call it IPNM, integrated plant nutrient supply system management, supply management system. So integrated plant nutrient supply system is an approach which adapts plant nutrition to a specific farming system and particular yield targets. The resource base, the available plant nutrients source and socio-economic background. Since plant nutrients are involved in cycles, IPNS or INM involves monitoring all the pathways of flow of nutrients in an agricultural production system to maximize the profit on a farm so that farming as a profession is continued, which is the only way to produce food globally. So it is a bit complicated, but if I want to simplify meaning of integrated nutrient management, it is making the combination or judicious combination of all possible nutrient sources so as to increase the nutrient use efficiency, soil health and farm profit is your integrated nutrient management. And supply should be balanced. So see, thus IPNS demands a holistic approach to nutrient management for agricultural production. For a true INM program, monitoring of all incoming nutrients, including those in irrigation water, and outgoing nutrients from a farm has to be done. Means nutrient budgeting, if possible, that should be done so that one can save the nutrient. One can use this knowledge. Sometimes if you use nutrients more than excess in more than required amounts, then it will not be good from the point of view of income. The investment will increase and income will decrease. However, for all practical purposes and in simpler words, IPNS involves judicious combined use of chemical fertilizers, organic manures including crop residues, green manures and biofertilizer, and most agronomic experimentation is centered around it. Now see what are the probable components of integrated nutrient management. From this point onward, I will call INM in place of integrated nutrient management. So you can understand later on INM means integrated nutrient management. Components are legumes in cropping systems, green manuring and dual purpose legumes, farmyard manure and compost, vermicompost, poultry manure, biogas slurry, pressmud cake, biocompost, phosphocompost, sewage sludge, crop residues, biofertilizer, chemical fertilizer. And this list is never ending. You can add some more sources of nutrients depending upon availability and local conditions. So here I will show you some of the results where one or two or three of these nutrient sources are combined in different cropping systems. What has happened to the productivity? What has happened to the soil health, including carbon, pH change, and something like that. So we are going to discuss now some of the results from different cropping systems. In rice wheat cropping system at Karnal, application of 15.3 ton FYM per hectare to rice was 88 to 92% as efficient as an application of 150 kg nitrogen plus 60 kg P2O5 plus 60 kg K2O per hectare. This means that this FYM was as good as your chemical fertilizer in this particular study on rice wheat system. While in wheat, an application of 20 to 40 ton FYM per hectare was only 38 to 45% as efficient as an application of 150 kg nitrogen plus 60 kg P2O5 plus 60 kg K2O per hectare. It means that FYM was more effective in rice and less effective in wheat. The reason is simple, that in Kharif season we get high temperature rainfall, decomposition of farmyard manure is easy, release of nutrient is fast, therefore rice got good yields when we use FYM. But in wheat it is other way around. Now your fertilizers are doing better than manure FYM, mainly because of slow decomposition rate due to low temperatures in winter months. When only FYM was used as a source of plant nutrients, there was decrease of 5 to 15% in rice grain yield and 35 to 58% decrease in wheat yield, more decrease in wheat. Higher yield decrease in wheat could be due to slower decomposition of FYM during cool winter months and thereby a reduced plant nutrient release. Thus, when only FYM is applied either on nutrient basis or otherwise, it was less effective than inorganic fertilizer. Its efficiency varied with crop and the season. At Ludhiana, NPK plus FYM recorded an average increase in grain yield of 17.6% over NPK in maize wheat rotation over 29 cropping cycles. Means it is almost sustainable system. You can use NPK plus FYM, the best treatment. Increase in grain yield also increases nutrient use efficiency. The advantage of FYM application are many and include supply of plant nutrients, improvement of soil chemical, physical and biological properties. It may be mentioned that addition of macronutrients, FYM also supplies secondary and micronutrients. In series of experiments, part N or NPK was supplied through FYM and the rest through inorganic fertilizers. In a study at Udaipur, Jat et al. 2013 reported that application of FYM at 10 tons per hectare along with 50% of STR, state recommended dose of fertilizer. STR means state recommended dose of fertilizer produced as much grain yield of sorghum as 100% STR, state recommendation. Further, the increase due to application of 10 ton FYM per hectare was 1 ton per hectare with 75% STR and 0.9 ton per hectare with 100% STR. This shows the advantage of FYM even over the STR. So, FYM is better than state recommended dose of fertilizer. Most interesting result of effect of FYM application on soil pH are available from AICRP, All India Coordinated Research Project on long-term fertilizer experiment at Ranchi, where soils are acidic red loams. So many times what students consider that when you use FYM, it will always acidify the soil. But in this case, long-term study, it was reverse actually. The lower pH values increased by using FYM, but most of students understand that this FYM will release acids, so therefore it will make your soil more acidic. No, that is not the case. So see this, continuous application of inorganic fertilizer like nitrogen, NP, NPK for a period of over 40 years reduce the soil pH from 5.4 to 3.9 to 4.2, means there was reduction of pH due to use of chemical fertilizer. while application of FYM along with NPK increased the pH to 6.3 and 6.5. So that is the best achievement from FYM. So it works under both conditions. If your pH is high, it will lower it. If your pH is low, it will raise it. So that is the best thing FYM could do here. Exchangeable calcium increased from 3 in control plot to 8.25 carbon per kg, centimole per kg in FYM added plots. Application of FYM along with NPK for 27 years at Ranchi increased available NPK, sulfur, copper and manganese. Similarly, application of 50% nitrogen as FYM plus 50% RDF to rice followed by 100% RDF to wheat significantly increased available N, P and K over an application of 100% RDF to rice and wheat at a number of research centers. In wet season rice at Sri Niketan in West Bengal, application of vermicompost containing 1.6% nitrogen, 1% phosphorus, 1% K, 10 ton per hectare along with 50% RDF was superior to 100% RDF, 60 N, 30 P and 30 K and produced 16% more rice yield. While an application of FYM 0.5% N, 0.2% P and 0.5% K at 10 tons per hectare along with 50% RDF was at par with 100% RDF. Means overall one can supply at least 50% nitrogen can be given from the FYM and rest can be supplied from fertilizers. So these results show superiority of vermicompost over FYM, which could be partly due to higher NPK content. Advantage of applying vermicompost along with chemical fertilizer has also been reported for pigeon pea. So now people are using vermicompost also, as in some area production of vermicompost is happening. It is increasing, but still many times studies suggest that it is not economic in field crops, particularly in crops where we have very large area. Vermicompost is good for pot experiments or for houses and so for high value crops or protected cultivation, etc. The result of a field study showed that the application of poultry manure significantly promoted sesame growth and yield. Seed yield per hectare was increased by 24 and 78% as manure rate was increased from 0 to 5 and 10 tons per hectare respectively in 2009 season. In 2002, it was increased by 96 and 155% with the same increase in the rate of poultry manure. So actually poultry manure is much rich in nutrients as compared to the FYM or even goat manure or sheep manure, etc. Experiments conducted at IARA, Indian Agricultural Research Institute, showed that nitrogen applied through BGS, BGS is biogas slurry, was as effective as urea for rice and wheat. At Ludhiana, application of 40% and through BGS and the rest 60% through urea was as efficient as 100% through urea. So this technique has been adopted by many farmers in certain areas of Punjab, Haryana, UP, Maharashtra and in some other state. Biogas technology is very good technology in which the biogas slurry produced is being used as a very good source of nutrient. It has very narrow CN ratio and high percentage of nitrogen and it can be directly applied into the field without any waiting period. Some farmers use it mixing it with irrigation water at the time of irrigation. So at Ludhiana, application of 40% nitrogen through BGS, biogas slurry and the rest 60% through urea was as efficient as 100% through urea. Means many of the these organic manures are as effective as urea, particularly biogas slurry. In a rice wheat cropping system, study at IARI when applied on equal nitrogen basis, biogas slurry was 10.7% more efficient than 100% nitrogen as urea. Please remember it, it was more efficient than 100% urea, while 70% nitrogen through urea and 30% nitrogen through BGS was at par with 100% nitrogen through urea. The highest grain yield of rice wheat cropping system was obtained with 70% nitrogen through Pusa Neem microemulsion coated urea plus 30% nitrogen as biogas slurry, which was 17.5% more than 100% nitrogen as urea. In a study at Ludhiana, application of 5-ton press mud cake, it is PMC per hectare, along with 40 to 60 kg nitrogen per hectare as urea, produced rice yield which was equal to that obtained with 120 kg nitrogen per hectare as urea. Therefore, this research suggests that press mud can be effectively used as a source of nutrient. Further, residual effect on succeeding wheat was equivalent to 40 kg nitrogen and 30 kg phosphorus per hectare. At Faizabad, application of 50% nitrogen through PMC, press mud cake, and 50% through urea to wheat was at par with 120 kg nitrogen, 40 kg phosphorus and 60 kg per hectare potassium by Chauhan and co-workers 2007. Thus, supplying nitrogen through PMC press mud cake also met the phosphorus and potassium needs of the crop. In a study at New Delhi, application of 5-ton biocompost per hectare along with 50% RDF produced the highest yield of wheat and maize, 21.8% more of wheat and 6.3% more of copse than 100% RDF, Tripathi and co-workers 2007. Application of BC with NPK also resulted in a significant increase in soil organic and available NPK, zinc, iron, copper and manganese. This BC is biocompost. In a composting study at Parbhani, Maharashtra, using NADP compost for making total P content in compost increased from 0.69 to 0.92% with rock phosphate, 0.98 with SSP and 1.03 with RP plus RP is rock phosphate plus PSB Aspergillus avamori. Composting rock phosphate with PSP also recorded the highest citrate soluble P. This makes rock phosphate readily available even on calcareous soils. In sugarcane, about 10 to 20% of the weight of cane harvested is left as trash on the field, which contains about 0.4 nitrogen, 0.13 phosphorus. The trash is generally burnt by the farmers and ratoon crop is raised. Studied at Lucknow have shown that leaving the trash as mulch increase the yield of third ratoon by 28% over total. Therefore, this trash should not be burnt. Sharma and Prasad reported an increase in rice wheat grain yield of 7.7%, 16.1% and 25.2% with rice wheat ista. Means mixing of legume and cereal ista is a better strategy for rice wheat system. Thus, if possible, rice or wheat residue may be applied in mixture with some legume residue for better results. Their results are given in this table, where you can see a grain yield was same, almost same, when we use Sesbania green manure or Sesbania green manure plus wheat extra or mung bean residue. But yield was low when they used only wheat extra. Similarly, this organic carbon was also accumulated in the soil. Effect of organic manures on crop yields and soil properties vary with the nature, nutrient content in them and their production of use. Ajam et al. Recorded highest grain yield of maize from poultry manure. In the case of INM, maximum grain yield was obtained from 25% poultry manure plus 75% mineral source. Application of poultry manure as soil nitrogen source resulted in maximum increase in soil total nitrogen and organic matter when compared with other soil nitrogen sources. Responses of various crops to the application of compost and vermicompost are well documented. Many factors such as the nutrient status of compost, rate and time of application, soil property governed the crop response. Field experiment clearly show that the compost was equally good and comparable with single superphosphate. Average response of crops to FYM compost was at the rate of 12 ton per hectare in rice, wheat, cotton, etc. It is given there. Benefit of vermicompost in terms of improved growth. So, it improves soil fertility and crop growth. Hope you liked this lecture, and Integrated nutrient management is the future of nutrient management in cropping system. Thank you very much.